I think we can get started. We're now at 2 minutes past. So, all right. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's community podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Shilpa Saxena, and I'll introduce her in more detail in a few slides. But before that, I just wanted to quickly go through some housekeeping. So, as always, please ask your questions in the chat window, and we'll make sure to answer them at the end. If you're not already a member, consider becoming one. It's free, and there's a lot of great information, great speakers. Just type in the URL. In fact, Sneha will put that in the comment section or scan the QR code. And one of the things that we've been doing for the last 8 weeks is a 12-week program where we have Dr. Saurabh Sane, who does a 15-minute class on various aspects. The completed topics are the ones listed, and the ones coming up are below that. It's an actual practical session where he guides you through those sessions. Many of you have already attended those, so you know how they are. They're really fascinating. And if you miss them, just be a part of the Strength and Mobility sub-community, and you get recordings of the session. Sneha has just put a link for the sub-community. So if you join that, you get the meeting invites for the 15-minute sessions, as well as a recording of the session if you have missed it. All right, our speaker for next week is Dr. Tushar Patil. He's an oncologist with a focus on hemato-oncology. And a topic that he's one of the most interesting speakers I've heard when it comes to cancer. He has a wonderful way of simplifying things and separating fact from fiction. So if you are interested in this topic, next week will be a fun conversation. All right, our speaker for today, Dr. Shilpa Saxena, and I think many of you probably already know her because she is the force behind our Menopause and More community that the women on this group, some of you are on that community. So Shilpa is, I won't go through her bio, it's on the screen. But in addition to being the Chief Medical Officer of Forum Health, she also teaches functional medicine. And more importantly, she is actually practically and actively helping Dr. Rashida Melinkari and Dr. Mugdha Parasnis bring all that know-how that she has been building and practicing over all these many years in the area of perimenopause, menopause, women's health, and training our team so that in India we can provide the same level of care and comfort and treatment that is available in the US. But I think there are two aspects of Shilpa that really, to me, best characterize her. One, she was recognized for her work for a very useful metric, for a very important metric, and that is, as a physician, she had a 90% lower hospitalization rate than many of her peers, which to me, like, that's what we're all hoping for, and we don't end up in the hospital, that we show up healthy because we take care of our health, and our healthcare system helps us do that. And so that metric is a very powerful metric, and I think that captures her quality as a physician. But the second metric to me, which is as important, is Shilpa is viewed by her patients as a friend, philosopher, and guide, rather than the person sitting on the other side of the table. She's on the same side of the table, helping the patient through the journey. And I think as patients, most of us are craving that type of a doctor, and so it's not a transactional relationship. And so, and the last point I'll make is an example of how passionate she is about this is, last week she was in California with us, and she spent 3 hours brainstorming product ideas on how to make menopause more accessible to women around the world. And what makes it even more fun was the fact that her audience was a bunch of 20-year-old guys and me, who she was, explaining the nuances of menopause, but as importantly, the feminine energy that has to come. And so I can tell you, the four guys in the room are now much more dateable with the new learnings they've got. But jokes apart, Shilpa, thank you for doing this and welcome to the community podcast.
Thank you for having me, Nikhil. This is going to be fun, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And so, Shilpa, let's start with, this first comment I made, which is the healthcare system in the US, and I would say in most parts of the world, is broken. Nobody is going to, argue that fact anymore. And there are lots of theories about why it is broken and so on. But the fact that, you have a 90% lower hospitalization rate suggests that you are doing something different. And I know this whole area of functional medicine is something that while you practice, most of us don't understand it. Can you talk about functional medicine, how that is different from the standard medical practice, and your whole experience of how you move from the standard medical practice to functional medicine?
Absolutely. I like to use simple stories and relatable stories to be able to explain more complex ideas. And so functional medicine at its simplicity is all about addressing the root causes of an issue, less about naming it or diagnosing it and then assigning some sort of pharmaceutical or procedural solution that is a temporary fix of the effect. Okay, so if you really think about conditions we manage all the time, like diabetes, high blood pressure, autoimmunity, cancer, when you see a physician, they will name it, then they blame it. They say, this is why you have this problem, as though this disease is some monster in you and it's come into you. So it's name it, blame it, then they treat it with the standard of care, which doesn't always have to do with you. It's just what is found in a population of 10,000 people, which are not you, to be an option. And then street it, which is, okay, I'll see you later. I'll see you in 3 months. Come back and we'll look at it. And then when you come back, maybe your diabetes is worse, so that we call it severe diabetes. We name it again, we blame it, we treat it, we street it. But this is very effect-based management. It's actually It's saying we can't change this. We cannot reverse it. There is no identifiable cause. Now, that is the way much of healthcare works. So functional medicine flips the entire script. It says, no, your diabetes is not just happening randomly. It's happening because there are a discrete set of causes. And it is a well-trained functional and or integrative medical physician that is trained in understanding your vitamin D deficiency could be the root cause of your insulin resistance diabetes. Of course, it could be that you're eating too much sugar or not exercising. But I would tell you, you've probably met people who've done the proper diet and exercise and still are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And that's because there are other causes for diabetes. So a functional medicine provider will evaluate a case, not to name the problem, but to identify the root cause of it. And then, this is the crazy part, we partner with our patients. So as Nikhil so beautifully said, I really work to make sure the power goes back to the patient, not that the power is with the provider. So when we empower the patient, they make better choices. Like, for example, they will understand and take their vitamin D, the right kind, the right way, and we track it with labs. And when they see their blood sugars are improving, now in partnership, they will do better with their diabetes. And so the 90% reduction in ER visits and hospitalizations is number one, because we're treating the root cause. So the effect is less likely to occur if you're addressing the root. But number two, my patients are very educated on what their choices are leading to. And therefore, they're not ending up in the emergency room, completely confused why their sugar is up. They'll say, oh, I haven't been taking my vitamin D and I've been eating these foods, and together, that is why my sugar is 350. And because they understand this, many times people go to the hospital out of uncertainty and fear, not because they're actually at the level of needing an ER visit or a hospitalization.
Yeah. And Shilpa, I think one of the critical aspects that you mentioned is you are in partnering with the patients, you're educating them. And
Yes.
education can't happen in the typical 15-minute session that happens today in most consults. What's the typical amount of time you spend with the patient today?
30 to 45 minutes. So I spend an hour in the beginning. Why? Because again, my goal in the first visit is to create partnership, and I have to create trust with the patient, and I have to create credibility. If I do not create that, then the next thing I say, the compliance, if I say, please take vitamin D, if I haven't gained trust, credibility, and partnership, these are just things that I've asked people to do that they're just going to say, thank you very much. And then they will decide on their own if they're going to do it. You know, there's so many prescriptions that are given to patients in the US that are never filled. And it's not because they may not help. It's because the patient never felt like the provider listened or they understood them well enough that they would trust that I would take this drug and risk the side effects.
Yeah. I mean, many of the community members have watched your videos, Shilpa, and you have a very, very amazing way to educate and explain things in simple terms. And I feel like that ability helps people start identifying and understanding why you're asking someone to take vitamin D, right? And maybe that's the point that you really are making, which is telling someone to take vitamin D, even if you describe everything perfectly, doesn't explain to them why that matters. You're only telling them the protocol to take it, but not why and how it's connected to diabetes and how it can help with this, that, and the other. And that just takes time.
Sometimes it's as simple as saying, if I told in a visit, sometimes I will say, please take vitamin D because this could be the one reason you're pre-diabetic. Now, if somebody doesn't get that that's how important vitamin D is, then they think, oh, she's just telling me to take a vitamin. So usually I imagine myself, it's very important for me to get into the shoes of the other person and understand what their life has led them to that moment where they're sitting with me. And if I see we've got somebody who's been traumatized by the medical system, we have somebody who's had too many side effects, we have somebody who's spent too much money, then all my explanations are reflecting who I'm with, right? So a big portion of what we do, and this is like the way the old healers were. Okay, like old healers did not have a 15-minute interaction with their patient. If you looked at, like ancient healing, you had to get to know the family, you had to get to know the person's life, and then only would you make some recommendations, understanding social context, understanding cultural context. These things still need to be a part of healthcare. We are not just physical beings. To think that, like I say, take vitamin D, 10,000 international units a day, it doesn't, I'm telling you, it doesn't work for a majority of people until they understand why they want to take it.
Yeah. I mean, it basically says there is education, but then there is education that's going to resonate with you.
Yes.
Right? And they're two very different things. And one of the things I read recently, which I thought was quite fascinating, and it is very pertinent to what you just said, Shilpa, and that is what AI can do very well is if you tell it what exactly it is that you have, what all your issues are, it will take all of that data and spit out something. But most of the times people don't or can't articulate all the stuff that may have contributed to why they do certain things, like maybe childhood trauma, maybe last year I had a specific issue, and the issue is not the processing, the issue is the input, and that has to be drawn out of them. And that's not
Yes.
15 minutes. It's going to happen over a 45-minute session that happens on an ongoing basis, where when you need to talk to a doctor, they're accessible. Not, I need to talk now, but I'll get an appointment in 3 months.
Yes, very true. And it's, historically, I'm not talking ancient, I'm talking over the last 50 years, there has been this hierarchical division where many physicians think, listen, I'm the expert. You be quiet and you listen to me. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you've ever been a parent, you know that does not work. Like, so doesn't matter how much you think you know. If the other person doesn't understand the why, they're not going to do it. Doesn't matter if you're the expert. And if the goal is to change an outcome, which is my goal, then I'm not going to sit on one side of the table and say I'm smarter than you. Listen to what I say, because it's not going to achieve my goal. My goal is for the person to feel better. And I do think we need to shift culturally in healthcare, and also patients. We need to teach patients, like, don't just go into a doctor's office and think they know you better than you. No, you live with yourself 24/7. You bring something important to the table. You want to work with someone who respects that you have insights and intuitions that need to be accounted for in the final decision making.
Yeah. I mean, we keep talking about advocate for yourself, which means you have to speak about what you as a patient are dealing with, what is concerning you. And then the doctor has to also be open to listening to all of that. And I think one of the things that I'm enjoying a lot watching is, the interactions that you have with, Dr. Mugdha Parasnis and Dr. Rashida Melinkari, because it's really a rare sight to watch so many doctors openly talk about what they know, what they don't know. I think that humility has to be in patients, has to be in doctors, has to be in everyone. Only then can you really get to a meaningful solution.
Very, very true.
All right. So, given that you go after problems with this, what you call the mango tree, right? A full approach, not
Yes.
a one by one sort of approach. Now, with that as a background, we come to women's health and menopause. And one statistic that I don't think a lot of people know, and this is true in the US for sure, I don't think it's true in India, is the amount of research dollars that have gone into men's health is like 50 to 1, maybe 100 to 1 ratio. Okay? And it's not just that. The second issue is that the cost of medication for that insurance covers, for example, testosterone replacement therapy for men
Covered.
Covered, for women not
No.
covered. And so this cuts across everything in terms of research, in terms of insurance. And so women's health is sort of is at a disadvantage by a massive amount. And so you come now with this functional medicine lens, you go after this. Can you talk about when you entered, because you started, I think, from gut health, right? At one point you were more focused on gut health, and then you also been doing women's health. What is it that you are seeing when it comes to women's health type of issues? What are the challenges when you got in, and now what are you seeing there?
Good question. I want to add one other thing to your list. So there's much less research with women. And the reason why is because women are much more complicated. And when you do a research study and you want to reduce variables, then you don't want to bring women in because they have menstrual cycles, they have pregnancy, they have menopause, and that could skew your data. So that's why they didn't like to include women. Well, we apologize for our biology. It's the reason why the world continues to exist, is because we have all those functions. But that's one of the main reasons women were excluded from research. Then also because there's a lot of male leadership on what is covered. You are right. Testosterone, very essential for women for replacement, not covered unless a woman has a sexual arousal dysfunction in the US, which is basically to service a man, it will be covered, but for your personal needs, not so much. Last is there's been a 30-year misrepresentation of the research that did exist that also put women at a disadvantage, because we have been trained to believe that hormones are dangerous. We've been trained to believe they increase our risk for cancer, clots, heart attacks, all these things that now, when we look back at the same evidence, we see we did not analyze it correctly, and we have been guiding women incorrectly and created a culture of fear, when in fact, the data, when looked at with our newer kind of open-minded lens, we see it actually can reduce cancer. It can actually reduce heart attack. It can reduce Alzheimer's, dementia. So one of the biggest things that I'm working with when I take care of women is, number one, you're not as broken and as in risk as you think. There's a lot more potential for healing than you've ever known. The other thing we're teaching women is hormones determine bone health. If we understood hormones better and earlier, we could protect many, many women from osteoporosis and the fracture that kills them. We can also have women, there's a study out of Cambridge that looked at women age and asked, what is the age where we have the highest risk of suicide? And it's age 45 to 49. What happens commonly at that time? Estrogen levels drop. So for decades, we have put women on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications when in fact we should have been giving them estrogen. And the latest data is showing that those prescription antidepressants actually have long-term side effects and risks that we should be mindful of, whereas estrogen has less in terms of risks in the right woman. So a big portion of what we're working on with women is kind of cleaning up the misinformation they've had for years.
Yeah. I mean, it took the FDA 23 years to finally come out and say, we made a mistake. We should never have badmouth, the hormones. And but 23 years of life was lost for so many women who could have had a much healthier, better quality of life.
And that's 2 generations, because if you heard your mother be afraid of hormones, it has become ingrained in you and you don't even know it. So because we're coming out with this, the Gen X women are still raised by their baby boomer mothers. And so the mindset, even though the Gen X has a Gen Z daughter, let's say, who's teaching her how to be more progressive, she still subconsciously is under the belief of how her mother acculturated her to think about hormones and mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, in the US, the percentage of women who are eligible for HRT, but who it's 5%. Only 5% of women in the US, the records show, are actually taking HRT.
Oh, taking it, right.
Taking it, yeah. And in India, that number is sub 1%, way sub 1%, partially because the latest treatments are not even available. But there are enough treatments available. It's just that there is this fear. And it's like, oh, I don't want to take anything artificial. But this is what your body just stopped producing. It was perfectly, natural. And then it stopped producing. So
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because I don't think there's a right or wrong, but there is an expansion of your understanding perhaps on this. So when I work with patients, many of them are what I'll call purists, like natural only, food, exercise, sleep, stress. Let me tell you, I will always support a foundational lifestyle program because it is going to help you with 80 to 90% of your diseases that you have. If you can slowly and incrementally improve what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, and how you perceive your stress. Fundamentally, would never disagree with those folks. However, there is, because you've probably lived on this planet, the effects of staying up late, being overstressed from your work or your cell phone or your family. You probably have not eaten perfectly because the amount of processed foods that are now available are just so they're so prevalent that it doesn't even feel like it's fake food. You call it food. And of course, we're sitting in front of our computers all day. There's sedentary behavior, very, very dangerous. So what I say is many of us will still need a prescription of some sort. And I bucket them into 2 categories. There is prescriptions that are designed to bring back original design. Okay? Original design is the way God or evolution made us. Whatever you believe in, there is an original design. There's probably an ideal thyroid level, ideal estrogen level, ideal, hydration level, et cetera, et cetera. So if a pharmaceutical is trying to reestablish original design, to me, then you are in alignment with evolution and or God, which I'm going to say is the better doctor. Okay, is the better doctor in understanding how all these processes work. If you then put that up against a prescription, let's say, for example, a statin medication. Okay. Now, they're not all bad. People definitely can use statins, but statins do not reinforce original design. They come in and they alter biochemistry. So there will be a price when you mess with original design. You just have to understand that is the cost of that pharmaceutical. When you replace hormones, I'm going to call that more in alignment with original design. Now, I'm also assuming somebody's going to push back and say, no, God meant for me to go through menopause and not have this amount of hormones. Absolutely true that there is a time when hormones should decrease. And that's why the rule is when we replace to the lowest effective dose. That's the goal, to get your symptoms under control. We do the same thing with thyroid medication. When someone is on thyroid hormone replacement, most of us don't say, oh, that's unnatural. You just say, oh, my thyroid isn't working, so let me replace the hormone. We say this about insulin because it's naturally occurring, right? So I'd like for people to consider bucketing hormones in the original design prescription versus looking at it like a chemotherapy drug or a statin drug or something that is definitely not a part of normal physiology.
Yeah, actually, that's an amazing framework, right? Original design versus what's being done to as a band-aid for maybe a lifestyle issue, right? The original design argument says you need it because even if you live the perfect lifestyle, you're going to lose it. So you have to find a way to deal with it. Whereas potentially you would never have to take statins if you lived a great lifestyle. So I think this is a really, really good framework. So maybe we go back, Shilpa, to the basics of menopause, right? Definition, right? Let's start with the definition of menopause, perimenopause, because many of these are terms people have heard, but what does it all mean?
Very good. So let's just go through a quick recap of the timeline of a woman. So when she's born, she actually has some of her mother's hormones in her. Then they go away. And then there's really low level of hormones until puberty. At puberty, the ovaries start sputtering on the production of estrogen and progesterone. So that's why we have the beautiful period of puberty not being so easy, but that's the sputtering of the hormones. Then we come into the reproductive phase where you should have regular cycles. So that is called premenopausal or reproductive phase, okay, because you can likely make babies during that time. Then at the end of the reproductive phase, just like you sputtered on with puberty, you will sputter off, and that is called perimenopause. Peri means close to. So I imagine it as you're circling the drain. Okay. You spiraled on and then you cycled and then now you're going to spiral off. So that's perimenopause. Menopause is defined as 365 days of zero vaginal bleeding, not 360. I always pray for the woman who had 360 days of no bleeding and then she gets a period. Then it starts all over again. You have to start with 365. But that's the technical definition. 365 days with no vaginal bleeding. That is the moment we call menopause. After that moment, you are postmenopausal. Now, people in lay terms will take out the word post and they just say menopausal. Okay, so peri is circling the drain. Menopausal, 365 days without vaginal bleeding. After that time, call yourself menopausal or postmenopausal.
Yeah. And then I think because like you said, most of us just use the word menopausal, but they might also be meaning we are perimenopausal. Yes. But it's all a catch-all, right? Perimenopausal, the actual moment of menopause, and then the postmenopausal. I'm dealing with menopause. Could be any of these three things.
Yes,
right?
So you have to understand what the person understands from the term, but scientifically, that's how we use those words.
And what are the ages? I mean, I know it changes from woman to woman, but what are the general ranges?
So many women can start perimenopause in their early 40s because of lifestyle and toxins. We're seeing some women have even earlier perimenopause in their late 30s, but I'm going to say early 40s. If I had to say, 45 to 55 is the most common age for perimenopause to begin, most common age. And so menopause can happen within that time. There are some women that'll like hold out until age 60. But the most common is 45 to 55 where menopause will occur.
Got it. And then once menopause occurs, how long, I mean, is post-menopause just then it's for the rest of your life, it's all the same?
Yes, that's the term. And one of the things to understand is your ovaries release progesterone and estrogen. And when menopause occurs, it's kind of like the ovaries said, we're closed for business. We're not going to output the same amount we did during your reproductive phase. And then you have these other glands called the adrenals, which are your stress management glands that will output a little bit of hormone to sustain you in the postmenopausal period. Having said that, the research shows that if we replace progesterone and estrogen to the lowest effective dose, we can bring back the benefits of reproductive phase, which is better sleep, better mood, better hair, better weight, better libido, better vaginal health, and the list goes on and on from the benefits. So your youth in the reproductive phase is based on a certain amount of ovarian hormones being released. We can mimic that in a safer way in the postmenopausal period. So you get the benefits, but we keep the dose low so that you don't incur the risks. So I'm not trying to make a 65-year-old woman have periods like she's 25. In no way are we trying to make original design in postmenopausal look like a 25-year-old. We're just trying to get a little bit of benefit of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and DHEA so they have a great quality of life, which is all about this concept in longevity, which is health span and youth span. And I'm sure you've been talking about these terms in this community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the two things I've noticed are the number of symptoms associated with perimenopause, menopause are not 3, not 7. I saw a list of like 90 odd symptoms, and each woman has a different experience. Some have it really hard, some not so hard. Some see these 7 symptoms, some see these other 18 symptoms. Why does that happen? Why is it changing so much from person to person?
Very good. So every individual, when you look at yourself, you are a mathematical equation. Okay. The first part of the equation is your genes. You can't change your genes. Okay. But that's only 20% of the final result. These are the things you inherit that might affect your hormones in terms of production or usage or removal. Okay, that's how we keep up with accounting. How much do you produce? How much can you effectively use? And how much can you remove after usage? Okay, so that's genes, 20% of your final product, okay? So don't blame your mother and father for what you're dealing with. Likely it's you. So the next big chunk is the 80% is lifestyle and environmental burdens. Okay, so what is lifestyle? This is how you eat, how you move, how you sleep, how you manage your stress. And you can do all those things perfectly, but you can live in Mumbai where the toxins that you are being exposed to still have to be accounted for in the mathematical equation because toxins affect hormones. So your net result is genes plus lifestyle plus toxic burden.
Got it. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And so when you try and treat a patient, Shilpa, like you said, genetics you can't do much about, but is there value in knowing what the genetics are?
Absolutely. Because you cannot change your genetics, but you can manipulate the expression of your genetics. Okay, so I'll give you my example. So in my family, we are not very good at detoxifying. So our livers don't get rid of toxins as well as other people. This shows itself that if I have 2 ounces of wine, I'm already feeling the effects, whereas my friends can have 3 glasses before it even looks like they've had any alcohol. Okay, so in my family, my genes do not remove toxins well. So then how do I mitigate for that? I can't change that about my family, but I can change then how much alcohol I drink. I can also make sure that I treat my liver very good. So I'm eating the right kind of vegetables that give my liver the nutrients it needs to remove. So if I lived in Mumbai and I had my genetics, I would be working very hard to make sure I eat right, that I sweat well to get rid of the toxins, that I drink plenty of water to give my kidney the ability to take out toxins. So your lifestyle can absolutely help you manipulate your genes and the effects of your toxins, right? And then choices in our lifestyle, I eat cleaner because I know my body, doesn't handle processed food. So whenever possible, I try to make my own foods. If I'm going to go buy food outside, I try to find foods that have less toxins, just knowing I don't remove them well. Now, my husband is prone to headaches. He has to live his life based on what he's got to do in his lifestyle to reduce his issue for migraines, which runs in his family. But we have figured out, well, these are the things that trigger migraines for you. If you don't want a migraine, don't eat this way. Make sure you sleep this much, like this.
Yeah. And from a lifestyle perspective, Shita, what are the 3 to 5 things? And I'm sure there's a series of things, but what are the biggest bangs for the buck when it comes to lifestyle that cut across people and everybody would benefit from these 3 to 5 things?
Ooh, okay, this is the money portion of this talk, isn't it? Okay, number 1, I think there's a principle in Ayurveda called dinacharya, and it means we should have a daily routine. Your body likes rhythm, and it likes to be of the human variety, okay? Like you are not an owl, you are not a bat, you are a human. Human are daytime mammals. So we are meant to align with a circadian routine, which means we wake up in the morning around the time the sun rises, or before if you like to meditate. You do your activity heavily in the first part of the day. When the sun goes down, you start resting and you sleep well. So have a routine. Keep your meals at the right times of the day, similar times, sleep at the same times within 1 hour, do your activities in a predictable way. That allows your body to function optimally because it can anticipate your rhythm. Okay, so dinacharya, or just a routine, is super important. Then I would pick sleep. Okay, whether it's good to fall asleep, and this is going to hurt my friends in India. You're meant to be asleep by 10 p.m. Otherwise, you're considered a night mammal. So, because that's around the time the sun is down by then. So you should be down by then. And so aim to try to get to bed at 10 p.m. and then wake up somewhere around the sunrise, getting 7 to 8 hours sleep, and make sure you don't have sleep apnea. This is a very common issue when it comes to sleep. The next thing that I would say is look at the quality of your food and try to make sure that most of your food was made by the earth and not by a man. A simple rule. The more ingredients your dadima cannot pronounce, if you look at a label and your dadima would not know what it is, it's probably not meant for you. It's probably not meant for you. I always tell my pediatric patients, if God wanted us to have juice, it would be flowing in the rivers. If God wanted you to have cookies all the time, it would be growing on a tree. So you can have it every now and then and make it with homemade ingredients. I eat cookies, but I try to make it with ingredients that my grandmother would recognize. Yeah. Okay. So food quality makes a big difference. Hydration. I can tell you so many of my healthy people forget that water is important. So I bet you most people on this call are not drinking 8 cups of water a day or water equivalents. Okay. Like I have a protein smoothie and that's like 2.5 cups of water. That counts as water because it's based with a water. But hydration would help your kidney, your liver, your heart. Incredible. Then I would say that most of the people on this call are vitamin D deficient. I know that I should say exercise and all this type of stuff, but I hope you all know this. I think you should get your vitamin D level checked and make sure you optimize your level to be above 50 to 80, because 50 will reduce risk for heart attack and cancer. 60 starts giving you even more cancer protection and autoimmunity reversal. And you start getting reversal of diabetes, prediabetes. I mean, that's just from vitamin D. It's a game changer. So that was what, 3?
Mhm.
You want
Yeah.
more, or this is good?
So maybe I can ask you specifics.
Please.
In diet, the one interesting statistic I read is that in the US, 95% of the US population does not get enough fiber.
Yes.
Fiber and protein, these are two topics that have been discussed a lot more of late than in the past. What is your take on the right amount and what type of fiber and protein that helps?
So good question. So protein, of course, is getting a lot of publicity. We want to make sure we have clean protein, and you want to time your protein so that you break your fast in the morning with protein, and that you have some protein, especially women, midlife women. You should not exercise without having some protein before you start. A little bit, 15 grams of protein. And then within 30 minutes of finishing your exercise, you should consume another 30 to 45 grams. Okay. So, and this is true of men. Men, you have 2 hours after workout to get your protein in. Women, midlife women, we only have 30 minutes. Okay. So really important that after you work out, if you go shower and get ready and then eat your protein, your muscles did not get the protein they needed, especially if you're doing strength training. In terms of protein intake, it varies based on weight, but you can take your weight in kilograms and roughly estimate that to be a good starting point, assuming you don't have any major obesity. In terms of fiber, now this is where it becomes difficult for midlife women. And when we put women on hormones and optimize their vitamin D, they actually can expand how many calories they can eat. Because the problem is that if you tell women you have to eat this much protein and you have to eat this much fiber and you have to eat this many vegetables, well, then their caloric intake goes so high that then they start gaining weight. And I don't know very many women who love that. So what we do for fiber is you want to do a 50-50 mix of soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. And if you just do a quick internet search on soluble and insoluble fibers foods, you'll find out which ones you want to incorporate more into your diet. A lot of our supplements are soluble fiber. If you think of a dish sponge, I don't know if these are the same in India, but I think they are. There's a scrubby, rough side, and there's a soft side. So fiber, the soluble fiber is the soft side of the sponge. You need it. It's absorbent. It helps absorb bad things out of the bloodstream like cholesterol. But the insoluble fiber is like the rough part of the sponge. And you need that because you need to clean the lining of the gut so that it continue to absorb and remove waste well. So be careful of your supplements. If it's only soluble, you're missing the rough part of the sponge. And you just think about how hard it would be to clean your dishes if you didn't have the rough part.
And how many grams of fiber, Shilpa, would you recommend?
So your goal is to work up to 35 to 50 grams, but you cannot do that all at once. So if you calculate your fiber intake to be 5 grams of fiber per day, you would probably increase by 5 to 10 grams of fiber every 3 to 7 days. Because if you bring too much fiber in too quick, you will, absorb water and create fermentation and a lot of gas. So goal 50 grams of 25 soluble and 25 insoluble.
Strength training. Cardio has always been viewed as exercise. Strength training historically wasn't. But now not only is it considered important, but it's considered even more important for women. Um, how do you think about this?
So let's talk. It's very true. If we think about the old days, women were supposed to get on the treadmill or go running or, do aerobics. The problem we're noticing now, especially in midlife, and I'm going to keep bringing it back to this perimenopause, menopause group of women, is that during this phase of our life, we are much more prone to high cortisol levels. Okay. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Cortisol is what makes us put on belly fat. It's what ages our body. It's a stress hormone. Now, when we do cardio, if you are doing cardio and you haven't fed your body or it's too rigorous, you will actually increase cortisol levels in your body and worsen your aging. Okay. Whereas the strength training, what we're encouraged to do now in this midlife is the heaviest weights that we can safely lift. You want to do 4 to 6 reps and 3 sets. So for example, if I have a 5 kg dumbbell or a 10-pound dumbbell, and I'm doing 4 bicep curls, and at the end of it, I know the 5th one, I'm going to hurt my shoulder, then that's the right weight. If I go, let's say I go down to 2 kgs and I could easily do 8, too light. It means you're not putting enough demand on the muscle, and then the muscle needs to put demand on the bone. And if the bone has in the bloodstream vitamin D and calcium and all these things, then the bone will get stronger. So you need the right force, but then you also need the right nutrients in the bloodstream. So the force plus the nutrients equals the bone growth.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important point, because people often talk about, oh, I'm having enough protein, but my muscle is not increasing. Protein plus strength training is when the muscle actually increases, when the bone actually gets better. You can't just have one or the other.
That's right. And then, like I said, with women, that protein has to come in within 30 minutes of finishing exercise. That's where a lot of women, they're doing the best exercise, but they've waited too long to put the building blocks of muscle in.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a topic that, because for men, another example of research done on men, you could exercise faster as men, but as women, there was no research. Only recent research has shown that you need to do this. Otherwise, you are actually doing yourself a disservice.
That's right. There's a great PhD doctor. Her name is Stacy Sims, and she does a lot of great podcasts for women and strength training at this age. I highly recommend her. She also has a nutrition background, and I think she gives very good advice in case you want to learn more about this topic.
Yeah, Stacy Sims is someone we recommend heavily on this.
Oh, awesome. Community. Right. She's I find her to be very credible.
Yeah, absolutely. Supplements, Shilpa, a function of obviously where you are short, rather than just taking it because you want to check a box. What are the top supplements that you see most people need?
So we talked about vitamin D3 with K2. If you only take D3 without the K2, that signals for calcium to be used, but the K2 says don't go to the arteries and calcify the arteries, go to the bone. So D3 with K2. Then I think a form of magnesium is probably useful for most of us. Magnesium is a mineral. It's Mother Nature's muscle relaxer. And we have all different types of muscle tissue in our body. So if you take magnesium citrate or oxide, that carrier with the magnesium determines where the magnesium ends up. So citrate oxide says you'll stay in the bowel, and the bowel muscles will then relax, and that helps a lot of people with constipation. Now, magnesium glycinate or magnesium chelate, these will cross the bowel wall and make it into the blood. Now, the muscles that are important in the bloodstream are the literal arteries that have muscles that you want to relax so your blood pressure reduces, but also it goes through the arteries into your skeletal muscle, things like your biceps, your quads, your trapezius. These muscles, when they relax, you have less headaches, less cramps, less tension. Okay, so that's magnesium glycinate chelate. And then the last magnesium, which functional medicine people know about, which most of society doesn't, is magnesium L-threonate. This one will cross from the bloodstream into the brain through the blood-brain barrier, and then it relaxes the brain. This is really good for people who tend to like think too much, can't stop themselves from negative thinking, or just they need to slow down because they can't even focus. They're tripping over their own thoughts. And there's nothing wrong with combining the magnesium. So I think that's a super important one to consider. The other supplements that, around, and you might know this, Nikhil, working in genetics, is there's many people with methylation defects. Methylation is an important way that your liver removes toxins. And think of it like your kitchen trash bag. If you did not have a kitchen trash bag, your house would probably get dirty quick. So methylation defects in your genes are in more than 30% of the population. So when you take a B vitamin and you have this methylation issue, regular B vitamins do not work for these individuals. So they need a specialized form called a methylated B12 and a methylated folic acid, because that form is bypassing your genetic deficiency so that you can use B12 and folic acid to take out the trash. And if you don't take out the trash, just imagine what your body would be like, what your house would be like if you did not have the ability to take garbage out of your house. Then a probiotic is commonly something I use more because I have so many people with gut health issues. Okay, I don't think we need a probiotic for life, but if you have gut symptoms, most likely you will need some form of a probiotic. I think that's good. And then listen, exercise is the most potent anti-inflammatory supplement you can do. Exercise. So, I have, people will take omega-3 fatty acids, which is very, very good. However, if you're vegetarian, like my mother, I tell her, then you have to exercise. Because the vegan forms of omega-3s, although nice, they're very expensive and you have to take a lot of them to get the 10x multiplier benefit of taking a fish-based omega-3. But if you don't want to do that, then you need to incorporate exercise and movement, regular movement into your daily routine. Best anti-inflammatory thing you can do.
How about creatine, Shilpa?
It wouldn't make my top 5, but
Okay.
creatine, it wouldn't make my top 5. Now, unless I have different supplements I recommend for endurance athletes versus, like your regular midlife woman who's trying to be fit, versus someone who is really chronically ill and needs to regain health before they're looking into health longevity. So creatine has been shown, and Stacey Sims talks about creatine, and so does Dr. Vonda Wright is another name, orthopedist. So creatine 5 grams per day can be useful for some. Just know that if it's absorbing too much water in your system, then there may be a lymphatics issue that needs to be addressed, because it's going to absorb water and hydrate muscle. But if you can't get that extra water out, then there may be something going on in your body that needs to be looked at. It's not dangerous. It's just you won't like being water retention.
Right.
If that's you.
Protein powders. If you're not getting enough supplement, if you're not getting enough through your food, if you're vegetarian, for example, let's say, is that something that you recommend?
Yes, I do. So there's my protein shake for the day. I think obviously, like anything, the quality of the manufacturer and the quality of the ingredients, but I use that commonly for vegetarians because it's hard to get in a volume of concentrated protein without getting the calories so high. I love doing the protein shakes first thing in the morning. The reason why that's great is because you break your fast with protein. If you're like me, I don't like a lot of heavy food in my stomach first thing in the morning. So a pre-digested protein is wonderful. It's easy on the gut and it comes in, it normalizes blood sugars for the day. It normalizes cravings for the day. So I highly recommend that. Just make sure you're looking at the quality.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many more questions, Shilpa, in our list. We didn't even go over them, but let's get to audience questions because we're running out of time.
Okay.
I think the first one you already answered for Aarti. What's the right vitamin D? You spoke about the 50 to 80 in terms of amount, but is there a type of vitamin D, or if you get it from a
D3K2.
Yeah.
So it's D3 with K2, and you check a vitamin D 25 OH level. It's called vitamin D 25 hydroxy. That's what you would ask your doctor to order. And that level, I confirmed with the Indian physicians that it's the same lab range in India. 50 to 80 is where you're aiming. You can go up to 100, but you want to get to 50. And especially, it's very useful. It's very useful for improving immunity. Just as a quick note, in our network, we have been always recommending vitamin D3K2. When COVID hit, our rates in our network of people going into ICUs and or dying was almost zero because our patients were always on vitamin D. That was just a part of our practice.
Oh, that's a pretty good study, right? Right there.
Yeah. Yes.
Vaibhavi made a comment, which I know she and many others have experienced this firsthand, as have I, that this is completely on the other end of the spectrum from some doctors, several I have consulted, who do not like to be questioned in terms of why you're telling me to do X, Y, Z. This is at the beginning of our conversation. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So I think that just right now, the only thing that I always, from my own experience, have come to a conclusion is if you are questioned for asking, constructive questions, change your doctor.
Exactly. And reward the doctors who are partnering with you with your business. And then other doctors will start saying, why is everybody going to Dr. Shah? Or why? Oh, this is why they like her. And then they might be, that's kind of the way that we've become very popular. Our regular doctors are getting scared that they're losing business to us, that people would rather pay cash for us than use insurance with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a very powerful comment, right? Which is, for those who don't know, the system that Shilpa is part of does not accept insurance. It's mostly cash. And people are willing to pay it because at least they get great treatment and great service. Deepika said, totally agree and love this approach. Sharda's question, synthetic hormones through oral pills is a good choice during menopause to manage symptoms like depression and excessive menstrual shedding? Like, it's a question.
So the safest form of estrogen is topical or transdermal estrogen. Oral has some risks associated with it. So transdermal patch or gel would be better. And then oral progesterone is the safest. So oral progesterone, transdermal estrogen.
Yeah. And just to add to what Shilpa said, for anyone who wants to have this type of conversation with a doctor in India, we have Dr. Rashida Melinkari on the call, as well as Dr. Mugdha Parasnis. Reach out to them. You can get to both of them through our one-on-one site, but worth having these conversations. Vaibhavi's question, measuring protein intake is easy. How do we measure fiber?
In grams. When you look at, you can look up the food and see, for the serving size, how many grams of fiber there would be. The other thing is that Sneha and many other nutrition lifestyle coaches will help people understand if they don't want to do all the due diligence, but it's 35 to 50 grams of fiber a day. And you just look it up, like how many grams of fiber is there in an apple?
Yeah, and Vaibhavi, we have a Kai, right? We have a WhatsApp thing that we have created. It's free. You can use it to take photographs of your food, and within WhatsApp it will show you the grams of protein, carbs, fiber, everything. Kiran's question is, would you be addressing clinician-led weight loss combining GLP-1 medication?
We do that quite often in our practice because especially on the topic of menopause, women come to us behind the power curve, meaning they've already gained their 50 pounds, they're depressed, they have low libido, their marriage is, questionable. So helping a woman lose weight and catapult it with the proper use of a GLP-1 to optimize her calories, help her start losing weight, get her self-esteem up. That gives her enough motivation to maybe start moving more, Absolutely. There's so much good data on the proper use of GLP-1. The worst thing you can do with a GLP-1, in my opinion, as a cardiometabolic functional medicine faculty, is starve yourself by taking it and lose all your muscle. That is so commonly done. You think you're losing weight. No, you have unfortunately lost your muscle, which is equal to your health lifespan. The more muscle you retain, the more healthy you will be. Do not starve yourself on a GLP-1. You use it to curb your bad cravings. Because if you starve yourself, you're not getting in your protein. So you take it to the dose. We use microdosing. You take it to the dose that allows you to not eat the mithai and to not do the things that you know are in opposition of your health, but it keeps you focused on, oh, I feel like having a salad, or I'll eat vegetables, because it will reduce your cravings to where you want the healthy stuff. And that's how you lose fat. You want to lose fat. You don't want to lose weight.
Yeah. And if you're interested, again, some of the blog posts are right. Talk about it. We have Sneha, Shruti, a couple of dietitians who can also guide you on this. But GLP-1s without lifestyle is dangerous because, like Shilpa said, you lose the muscle, and then when you stop, you put on only fat. So net, you are now worse off than you were before you started.
That's right.
I think Sarita's question we've answered. Do you recommend protein powders? Yes. Aarti's, sometimes I've heard to avoid injury that for weight training it's better to use a lighter weight and more reps. Should we be doing the opposite?
So you want to use the heaviest weight that you can tolerate and do the exercises appropriately with right form. If you are more prone to injury, then maybe work with a personal trainer who can make sure that you're doing it right before you get to the heavier weights. But heavy is relative. So, I have friends who could probably do, double the weight in a bench press than me, but that's okay. As long as I'm feeling maximum tension and able to do 4 to 6 reps, that is heavy for me.
Yeah. To add to what Shilpa said, Aarti, what I found is you getting to 4 reps, right? 3 sets of 4 reps. Whatever weight you can do with good form, that's the right weight for you. And over time, that weight will go up because your muscle is building. But I think it's a great idea to get a personal trainer just for a couple of sessions, because the biggest issue is form. And we don't know whether we are following the right form. We think we are, but it's those micro tweaks that sometimes help. And then use the 3 sets of 4 reps.
And make sure you rest between the sets, because if you keep going, like if you lift, you will increase cortisol. So you do your 4 reps, and then you take 30 to 60 seconds and breathe, get your stress to come back down, and then do another 4. Otherwise, you're going to stack cortisol from heavy lifting too.
Yeah. And 3 times a week is more than enough. Even 2
Absolutely.
Is sometimes okay. But keep distant, like at least 1 day separation between, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday, something like that. Because if you try to get all 3 days done one after the other, again, you're not giving your muscle a chance to recover and resynthesize. Most functional medicine doctors don't take insurance. How about you? Yeah. Neither does Forum, right?
Yeah. The reason we don't take insurance is because we go against what insurance recommends. So it doesn't work as well. So that's true. Forum does not take insurance. We try to create affordable options for people. And we try to make it where you won't need the other doctors as much as well. My husband has a great line. You can either invest in your health or pay for your disease.
Yeah. And I think the thing that if you take insurance, then you're pushed to start providing statins as part of protocol, even if it's not relevant. Where it is relevant, it should be, but its protocols are not necessarily the best. How do we know what issues our body has? I think your body probably is, I don't know, Shilpa, how would you answer that question?
That's a very broad question. You have to pay attention, and then you have to start tracking, and then take it to someone who's a good translator who will partner with you to help you decipher. But the first part is to not assume that all these things are normal for your age. I cannot tell you how many people come to me and they say, oh, the orthopedic told me I was 40, so I'm going to have bad knees. That's not true. You should not have bad knees when you're 40. You're not an old person. I teach my patients, I want you to be vibrant until you're 75. At 75, you're allowed to tell me you have bad knees. And not even bad, just that your knees are bothering you. My goal, you can be functional and very active until you're 75, 80. Do not accept this whole you're getting old at age 40.
Yeah. Do you recommend HRT for all the perimenopausal women, or does it depend on one's symptoms?
I think that it's generally recommended for most perimenopausal women. Obviously, if the woman is in active cancer treatment, we wouldn't give it. There's some other things that we would just, like if somebody has a melanoma or some other kind of cancer that can be made worse by a hormone, then we don't do it. But even if a woman does not have symptoms, but she wants to protect her bone or her brain, if she's perimenopausal, there's likely an indication for it. So I would never say all. There's nothing besides water. I would tell most, I'd say all humans drink water, but most everybody else, we've got to do a personalized evaluation. But most everybody.
Yeah. And the last question, Bindu's, will the supplements and weight training be summarized in the channel later? Yes. We will be putting every Saturday, we send out the video as well as a summary document that goes with the video. And that should be, that should give you what you're looking for, Bindu. Vaibhavi, are the Indian doctors you're speaking with now prescribing HRT? Yes, Vaibhavi. So if you speak to Mugdha, who's actually, I think she was on the call, she can, we can connect you offline. But yeah, I think that's it. Shilpa, thank you so much. What an amazing conversation. So educational. We all learned a lot. And so you'll see a lot of love flowing your way on the community. But thank you for taking the time in the midst of a busy day. I know you have tons of patients to go to. So thank you again. And let's maybe do this in a few months because there's just so much more to discuss.
Yes, we can. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope you always have great health on your side.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good day and good night.